The ocean doesn't forget. It keeps secrets buried in trenches deeper than mountains are tall. It swallows ships whole and spits back wreckage decades later. But sometimes, rarely, it returns something that shouldn't exist anymore. Something wrong. This is the story of the SSV Persistence, and the men who came back from a voyage that, according to every law of physics we understand, should have taken 3 weeks. But for them, it took 40 years. March 14th, 1981, the North Atlantic. The Persistence was a research vessel, not glamorous, not military, just a 200-foot steel workhorse funded by a consortium of European universities studying deep-sea thermal vents off the coast of Iceland. 12 crew members, 4 scientists, Captain Henrik Voss, a 42-year-old Norwegian with 20 years at sea and a reputation for caution that bordered on paranoia. Good thing, too, because the North Atlantic in March is a graveyard. Storms sweep down from the Arctic with almost no warning. Rogue waves, walls of water 70 feet high, can appear out of flat seas. Ships vanish out here often. The ocean is patient and it is hungry, but the Persistence was prepared. Triple redundant navigation systems, reinforced hull, enough provisions for 2 months, even though the mission was scheduled for 18 days. Voss didn't take chances. On the morning of March 14th, the ship departed from Reykjavik harbor under clear skies. The last radio transmission came 36 hours later. March 15th, 11:47 p.m. GMT final transmission. The voice was calm, professional. First Officer Strand, Reykjavik Coast Guard. This is SSV Persistence. Position 66.2 north, 18.4 west. Reporting minor electrical interference. Navigation systems experiencing intermittent failure. Switching to manual. Weather clear. Sea state calm. Will report again at 06 hour. Persistence out. Electrical interference wasn't unusual. Solar flares. Magnetic anomalies near the Arctic Circle. Equipment degrades. It happens. But then, silence. 06 Mu came and went. No transmission. By noon on March 16th, Coast Guard Reykjavik attempted contact. Nothing. By evening, a search and rescue operation was launched. The search, March 16th, March 23rd, 1981. They found nothing. No debris, no oil slick, no life rafts, no distress beacon. It was as if the Persistence had sailed off the edge of the world. Helicopters swept the search grid for a week. Naval vessels from Iceland, Norway, and the UK joined. Sonar pinged the ocean floor. Satellite images were analyzed frame by frame. Nothing. On March 23rd, the search was officially called off. The Persistence and everyone aboard were declared lost at sea. Families mourned. Insurance paid out. Documentaries were made. And like so many maritime disappearances, the story faded into the background hum of tragedy that the ocean produces every single year. But the ocean wasn't done. June 7th, 2021, 40 years later. A fishing trawler out of the Faroe Islands, the Njörður, was hauling nets 140 miles northeast of Iceland. The captain, Einar Thomsen, a third-generation fisherman, noticed something on radar. A contact, large, metallic, stationary. At first he thought it was a submerged shipping container. They're a plague in the North Atlantic, fallen-off cargo ships, floating just beneath the surface, ready to gut a hull. But this was too big. Thomsen slowed his vessel and brought it closer. What he saw made his blood stop. A ship, dead in the water. No lights, no movement. Hull covered in rust and barnacles but intact. Floating, not sinking. He radioed the Icelandic Coast Guard. This is the Njörður. I'm looking at a derelict approximately 200 feet. Research class, no flag visible, no identification, requesting assistance. Within 6 hours, a Coast Guard cutter arrived. They boarded the ship. And that's when they found the name, barely visible beneath decades of corrosion, SSV Persistence, the ship that had vanished in 1981, 40 years ago. The boarding, June 7, 2021, 4:32 p.m. The Coast Guard team went aboard with cameras running. The deck was a graveyard of rust, equipment fused in place, ropes rotted to threads. Everything looked like it had been abandoned for decades, which technically it had, but the ship was floating, no hull breaches, engines cold but intact, bilge pumps long dead, yet the ship hadn't taken on enough water to sink. It was as if it had been preserved. They made their way to the bridge. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air was stale, thick, the smell of rot and salt and something else, something organic and wrong. And then they saw him, Captain Henrik Voss, slumped in the captain's chair, dead, but not 40 years dead. His body was old, skin mottled with age spots, hair white and thin, hands gnarled with arthritis. But the decay, the decomposition, was recent, days, maybe a week. He was wearing the same uniform described in the 1981 manifests, but his body had aged. The medic on the boarding team froze. This doesn't make sense. This man, he's in his 80s, maybe older. The captain in 1981 had been 42. They found 3 more bodies below decks, all old, all recently deceased, all crew members of the Persistence, men who had vanished in their 30s and 40s. Now corpses in their 70s and 80s, and in the ship's galley, scrawled on the wall in what looked like dried blood. It wasn't 3 weeks. The Icelandic authorities sealed the Persistence immediately. No press, no leaks, just a terse statement. Derelict vessel recovered. Investigation ongoing. But you can't keep something like this quiet for long. Within 72 hours, photographs leaked online. Grainy images of the ship, close-ups of the bridge, and one photo, blurry, taken through a doorway of Captain Voss's body slumped in that chair. The internet exploded. Conspiracy theories, time dilation, alien abduction, paranormal phenomena. Everyone had an explanation. But the people who had actually boarded the ship, they didn't have theories. They had nightmares. June 8th, 2021. The forensic team arrives. Dr. Sigrid Halldórsdóttir, Iceland's chief forensic pathologist, was brought in to examine the bodies. She'd seen drownings, hypothermia victims, bodies recovered from the sea after months. She thought she'd seen everything. She was wrong. The first body she examined was Captain Voss. She started with the basics: external examination, clothing, identifying marks. The uniform matched archival photos from 1981, right down to the University of Bergen patch on the shoulder. But the body? This man is approximately 82 years old, she noted into her recorder. Advanced osteoarthritis in both hands, severe dental wear, corneal arc is consistent with aging, liver spots, muscle atrophy. This is not a 42-year-old man. She paused. But the decomposition is recent. Time of death, approximately 5 to 7 days ago. She looked up at the Coast Guard liaison. Where did you find this ship? Adrift, 140 miles northeast of here. And it's been missing since 1981? Yes. Silence. Then, that's impossible. The other bodies. 3 more crew members were found. First Officer Strand, found in his bunk. Age at disappearance, 38. Estimated age at death, 79. Engineer Larson, found in the engine room, collapsed near the controls. Age at disappearance, 35. Estimated age at death, 76. Deckhand Mikkelsen, found in the galley, near the message on the wall. Age at disappearance, 29. Estimated age at death, 71. Each one had died recently. Each one had aged 40 years. Dr. Halldórsdóttir ran every test she could think of. Tissue samples, bone density scans, DNA analysis. The DNA matched records from 1981. Families had provided samples during the original investigation. These were the missing crew members, but their bodies told a story that defied everything she understood about biology. The telomere analysis. Telomeres, the protective caps on the ends of chromosomes, shorten as we age. It's one of the most reliable biological markers of aging. Dr. Halldórsdóttir sent samples to a lab in Copenhagen. The results came back 3 days later. The telomeres were short, consistent with men in their mid to late 70s, not men in their 30s and 40s. These men had biologically aged 40 years, but the ship had only been missing for 40 years in our timeline. So when had they aged? Where had they been? And why had they only just died? June 10th, 2021. The logbook. A junior investigator found it wedged behind a panel in the captain's quarters. The ship's logbook, waterlogged, pages stuck together, but legible. The entries started normal. March 14, 1981. Departed Reykjavik, 09 Neuro. Weather clear. Crew in good spirits. ETA research site, March 16th. March 15th. Navigation systems experiencing minor issues. Electrical interference increasing. Switching to manual navigation. Seacom. No cause for concern. And then, March 16th. The sky is wrong. That was it. Just that one line. The next entry was dated March 17th. We can't find the sun. The instruments are useless. The compass spins. We're sailing, but we don't know where. The ocean looks different. The color is wrong. No birds, no wind, just stillness. March 18th. Strand says he saw lights beneath the water, deep down, moving. I told him it was bioluminescence, but I saw them too. They weren't natural. March 20th. We tried to turn back. The engines won't respond properly. It's like we're being pulled. The crew is scared. I'm scared. This isn't right. This isn't... The entry stopped mid-sentence. The next entry was dated March 25th. Time feels wrong. I checked my watch. Then I checked the chronometer. They don't match. Nothing matches. How long have we been out here? April the 2nd. Larson is growing a beard. It shouldn't be this long yet. April 15th. I looked in the mirror today. There are lines on my face that weren't there before. Strand says the same. We've been at sea for 1 month, but we look older. We feel older. June 1st. The food is running low. We've been rationing, but it's been months now. Months. How is that possible? We left in March. It should be late March, early April at most. Mikkelsen found grey hairs. He's 29. December 18th. I don't know what year it is anymore. The calendar doesn't make sense. We've been sailing in circles, if we're even moving at all. The ocean looks the same every day. No storms, no waves, just flat, empty. My hands hurt. Arthritis? At 42? That's not possible. Year unknown. We're dying. Not from hunger, not from thirst. We have enough, but we're aging. I can feel it. Every day I wake up older. My back aches. My vision is fading. Strand's hair is white. We're not sailing anymore. We're just waiting. Final entry. The handwriting was shaky, almost illegible. I don't know if anyone will ever find this. I don't know if we're even in the same ocean anymore. But if you're reading this, it wasn't 3 weeks. It was 40 years. And we lived every single day. The forensic team stood in silence. Dr. Halldórsdóttir read the logbook 3 times. Then she looked at the liaison. Where are the other 12 crew members? He shook his head. We've searched the entire ship. There are only 4 bodies. Then where are the others? No one had an answer. June 12th, 2021. The families. News broke globally. The families of the Persistence crew were contacted. Some had died. Others were elderly now. Siblings, spouses who had remarried, children who were now middle-aged. They were told the ship had been found. They were not told about the bodies, not yet. But one family member, Anna Voss, Captain Henrik Voss's daughter, demanded to see the ship. She was 18 months old when her father disappeared. Now she was 42, the same age her father had been when he vanished. They led her aboard. She stood on the bridge where her father had died, and she wept, because in the captain's quarters, tucked inside the logbook, was a photograph, a Polaroid, of her, as a baby, held by her mother. On the back, in her father's handwriting, Anna, I'm so sorry I missed your life. The world wanted answers. Scientists, journalists, grieving families, everyone demanded to know what had happened to the Persistence. But the Icelandic government, backed by NATO and the European Union, did something unusual. They went quiet. No press conferences, no official statements beyond the bare minimum, just silence. Because the people investigating the Persistence had found something that didn't fit into any category of known phenomena, something that terrified them. June 15th, 2021, the International Task Force. Within a week of the ship's discovery, a joint task force was assembled. Oceanographers, physicists, military analysts, experts in everything from deep-sea navigation to theoretical space-time. They had one objective: explain the Persistence. They started with the easy questions. Could the ship have been adrift for 40 years and only recently surfaced? No. The hull showed no signs of prolonged submersion, no pressure damage, no deep-sea corrosion patterns. Could the crew have survived at sea for 40 years? Absolutely not. The food stores were depleted but not gone. Medical supplies were barely touched. There was no evidence of long-term habitation, no makeshift repairs, no improvised tools, no signs of desperation. Could this be a hoax? Bodies planted by someone? The DNA was conclusive. These were the original crew members, and the aging was biological, not cosmetic. So what was left? The impossible. The physicists' way in. Dr. Emil Korsakov, a Russian theoretical physicist specializing in relativistic time dilation, was brought in as a consultant. He spent 2 days examining the ship, the logbook, the bodies. Then he gave his assessment. "If we take the evidence at face value," he said, "then these men experience 40 years of subjective time, while the rest of the world experience 40 years of objective time. But they were isolated from normal space-time." The room went silent. "You're talking about time dilation," someone said. "Like near a black hole?" Korsakov nodded. "Essentially, yes, but localized, and without the gravitational forces that would have crushed the ship." "Is that even possible?" He hesitated. "Theoretically. Under extremely exotic conditions, certain configurations of spacetime, perhaps near a closed time-like curve or within a region of altered metric, yes. But we've never observed anything like this naturally occurring on Earth." "So, what are you saying?" Korsakov looked grim. "I'm saying that ship didn't sail through water for 40 years. It sailed through something else. Somewhere else. A region where time moved differently." "Where?" "I don't know. The navigation data." The Persistence had been equipped with a primitive GPS system, one of the early models, used in conjunction with radio navigation and celestial positioning. The hard drive was corroded, but a data recovery team in Berlin managed to extract fragments. What they found made no sense. The GPS had recorded the ship's position continuously until March 16, 1981 at 03:17 a.m. GMT. At that moment, the position data became corrupted. Not lost. Corrupted. The coordinates flickered wildly. Latitude and longitude values that didn't exist on Earth. Numbers that placed the ship simultaneously in the North Atlantic, the South Pacific, and nowhere. Then, for exactly 14,610 days, 40 years, the GPS recorded the same position over and over, 66.6 degree N, 18.6 degree W, a point in the ocean northeast of Iceland. But when Coast Guard vessels went to those coordinates, they found nothing, just open water. No anomalies, no magnetic disturbances, no unusual readings, just ocean. The witness accounts. The crew of the Njordr, the fishing trawler that had found the Persistence, were interviewed extensively. Captain Thompson described the moment he first saw the ship. "It just appeared," he said. "One moment, nothing. The next, there it was, dead in the water." "You mean you didn't see it approach?" "No, it was there, like it had always been there. But I'd been scanning that area for an hour. There was nothing." The radar operator confirmed it. "No contact. Then contact. Instantaneous. As if the ship had simply materialized." June 20th, 2021. The medical paradox. Dr. Haldor's daughter released her full autopsy report. The findings were disturbing. All 4 bodies showed signs of normal aging, heart disease, osteoporosis, cellular senescence. These men had grown old naturally, but there were anomalies. Their teeth showed decades of wear, but no modern dental work. Captain Voss had a cavity that had been slowly eroding for years, untreated. Their bodies showed evidence of repetitive strain injuries consistent with years of manual labor aboard a ship. Calluses, scarring, bone density changes, but they had no signs of malnutrition or scurvy or any of the diseases that would come from being stranded at sea. It was as if they'd lived normal lives aboard a ship for 40 years. They weren't suffering, Dr. Haldor's daughter said in her report. They were simply aging. as if time was passing normally for them, even though they were isolated from the rest of the world. But then, the final detail. All 4 men had died within days of each other. Cause of death, multi-organ failure consistent with extreme old age. They had simply worn out. The message on the wall. Investigators returned to the galley where Deckhand Mickelson's body had been found. The message scrawled on the wall. It wasn't 3 weeks. Chemical analysis confirmed it was blood. Mickelson's blood. But there was more writing. Fainter. Almost invisible unless you looked closely. Beneath the main message in smaller letters, we saw it. And below that, don't go back. The crew interviews. The survivors. Remember, only 4 bodies were found. The Persistence had 16 people aboard when it vanished. Where were the other 12? Investigators cross-referenced the logbook. The final entries mentioned the full crew, but there were no details about what happened to the others. Had they died earlier and been buried at sea? Had they abandoned ship? Or had something else happened? The task force issued a global alert. Photos of the missing 12 crew members, age progressed to show what they might look like now in their 70s and 80s, were circulated. If you have seen any of these individuals, please contact authorities immediately. For weeks, nothing. Then, July 3rd, 2021, Oslo, Norway. A woman walked into a police station, elderly, mid-70s, confused. She said her name was Astrid Johansson. She said she'd been a marine biologist aboard a research vessel called the Persistence. She said she'd been at sea for 40 years, but according to her, she'd only returned yesterday. They ran her fingerprints, DNA, dental records. It was her, Dr. Astrid Johansson. Age at disappearance 34, current biological age 74. She was one of the missing 12, and she had a story to tell. But when investigators sat down with her, when they asked her what had happened, she looked at them with hollow eyes, and she said, "I don't remember leaving. I just remember being there, in the grey, for so long. And then I was here, standing on a dock in Oslo, and everyone I knew was old or dead." "What do you mean, the grey?" She trembled. "The place we were, it wasn't the ocean, it wasn't Earth, it was between. Between what?" She started to cry. "I don't know." July 10th, 2021. More survivors surface. Over the next 2 weeks, 3 more crew members appeared. Engineer Sørensen, found wandering near a beach in Scotland. No memory of how he got there. Deckhand Poulsen, discovered in a hospital in Denmark, admitted for severe disorientation. Biologist Dr. Nigi Ud walked into a library in Reykjavik and asked what year it was. All of them had aged, all of them were alive, and all of them told the same fractured story. They had been aboard the Persistence. Time had passed. Decades. They had grown old. And then, somehow, they had returned. But they didn't remember how. Just that one moment they were on the ship, and the next, they were standing on solid ground in 2021, as if they'd been released. The interrogations. Dr. Johansson was the most coherent. Investigators questioned her for hours. "What did you see? What was the grey?" "It was nothing and everything. An ocean, but not water. Sky, but not sky. We sailed, but we never moved. Days passed, but the sun never rose or set. Just grey light. Forever." "Did you try to escape?" "There was nowhere to go." "Did anything happen to you there?" She hesitated. "We saw things. In the distance, shapes, lights. We thought they were other ships. But when we tried to get closer, they'd vanish." "What do you think they were?" "I think they were other people, trapped like us." Silence. "How many?" "I don't know. Dozens. Hundreds. We'd see them sometimes. On the horizon. And then they'd be gone." The unanswered question. 8 survivors had returned. 8 bodies had been found. 4 on the ship. 4 more that washed ashore in the following weeks. That left 0 unaccounted for. Wait. No. The math was wrong. 16 crew members total. 4 bodies on the Persistence. 8 survivors. That was only 12. Where were the other 4? The missing 4 became an obsession. Investigators pored over every document, every manifest, every crew roster from 1981. The names were clear. Deckhand Jonas Fries, age 31, cook Maria Anderson, age 28, scientist Dr. Håkan Berg, age 39, second engineer Torben Clausen, age 33, 4 people. Vanished with the Persistence in 1981. Not found on the ship, not among the survivors, just gone. The task force issued alerts, Interpol, Europol, every law enforcement database in the world. If you have any information about these individuals, contact authorities immediately. But deep down, the investigators knew, if these 4 hadn't returned with the others, they were still out there, somewhere in the grey. July 18, 2021. The survivors' breakdown. Dr. Astrid Johansson was staying in a secured medical facility in Oslo. Psychiatric evaluation, trauma counseling, round-the-clock observation. She'd been stable, cooperative, until the night of July 18th. At 2:47 a.m., nurses heard screaming. They rushed to her room. She was standing at the window, pressing her face against the glass, staring out at the ocean in the distance. "They're still there," she was saying, over and over. "They're still there. They didn't get out." "Who, Dr. Johansson? Who's still there?" She turned. Her eyes were wide, terrified. The ones who stayed behind. The doctors sedated her, but the next morning, when she woke, she was calm again. Too calm. She asked to speak to the lead investigator. When he arrived, she was sitting upright in bed, hands folded. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Something I didn't remember before, or maybe I didn't want to remember." "Go ahead." She took a breath. "We didn't all experience the same thing. On the ship, in the grey, some of us, we started to change. Change how? Time was affecting us differently. Some aged faster, some slower, and some..." She trailed off. "Some what?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Some stopped aging altogether. The 4 who stayed." According to Dr. Johansson, about 10 years into their time in the grey, subjective time, impossible to measure accurately, the crew began to notice something. Deckhand Jonas Fries wasn't aging. At first, they thought it was just good genetics. Some people age slower, but after another decade passed, 20 years total, it became undeniable. Fries looked exactly the same as the day they'd vanished. 31 years old. Not a grey hair. Not a wrinkle. Cook Maria Anderson was the same. Frozen at 28. Dr. Berg, Torben Clausen, both unchanged. While the rest of the crew grew old, these 4 remained young. "We didn't understand it," Dr. Johansson said. "We thought maybe they were immune, that whatever was happening to us wasn't affecting them. But then we realized they weren't immune. They were stuck. The separation. In the final years aboard the Persistence, around year 35, according to Dr. Johansson's fractured memory, the crew made a decision. The ones who were aging knew they were dying. Captain Voss, First Officer Strand, all of them, their bodies were giving out. But the 4 who hadn't aged, they were terrified, because they realized, if time doesn't move for you, you can't leave. Dr. Johansson described the last conversation she had with Maria Anderson. Maria grabbed my hand. She was crying. She said, "I can feel it. When the rest of you go, I'll still be here. I'll be here forever." "What did you say?" I told her that wasn't possible, that she'd come back with us, but she just shook her head. She knew. The investigator leaned forward. "What happened to them?" Dr. Johansson's face crumpled. "I don't know. When we returned, when I found myself standing on that dock in Oslo, they weren't with us. I looked around. I expected to see them, but they were just gone." "Do you think they're still on the ship? Still in the grey?" "I think they never left." Silence. Then, "I think they're still sailing." July 22nd, 2021. The second search. The Icelandic Coast Guard returned to the Persistence. It had been towed to a secure facility in Reykjavik harbor for further study. They tore the ship apart. Every cabin, every storage locker, every panel, looking for the 4. They found nothing. No bodies, no remains, no evidence they'd ever been aboard. But in the ship's galley, where the message had been found, they discovered something new, hidden behind a loose panel in the wall. A second message. This one carved into the metal with something sharp. A knife, maybe. The handwriting was shaky. frantic. They took the ones who didn't age. We don't know where, but we heard them screaming. The lights beneath the water. Dr. Johansson wasn't the only survivor who mentioned the lights. Engineer Sørensen, one of the survivors found in Scotland, corroborated the story. During their time in the Grey, the crew had seen things moving beneath the ship. Deep down, glowing shapes, not bioluminescence, something else. They moved with intention, Sørensen said, like they were watching us. Did they ever come closer? He nodded slowly. Once, about 15 years in, we were all on deck, and we saw something rise. What? I don't know. It was huge, bigger than the ship. It came up from below, and for a moment we could see it just beneath the surface. A shape. Organic, maybe, or mechanical. I couldn't tell. What did it do? It circled us, slowly, and then it dove. Did it come back? Sørensen's hands trembled. Yes. The night Maria and the others disappeared. July 25, 2021. The recording. A junior technician analyzing the Persistence's systems made a discovery. The ship had been equipped with a basic audio recording system used to log radio communications. The tapes were degraded, mostly unusable, but one segment survived. A recording from approximately year 38 of the crew's time in the Grey. The task force gathered in a conference room to listen. The audio was distorted, crackling, but voices were audible. First, Captain Voss. Weak, elderly. Maria, please don't go down there. A woman's voice, younger, calm. I have to. They're calling. Calling? What do you mean? I can hear them. Under the water. They want us. Sounds of footsteps. Movement. Then another voice. Male. Deckhand Fries. She's right. I hear them too. They've been calling for years. We just couldn't understand before. Jonas, listen to me. We don't belong here anymore, Captain. We don't age. We don't die. We're not part of your world. We're part of theirs. Silence. Then a sound. Low. Resonant. Like a hum, but not mechanical. Organic. Coming from outside the ship. From below. The recording continued. Splashing. Shouts. Captain Voss. Maria. Jonas. Get back on the ship. But the voices of the four were distant now. Fading. Maria Anderson. One last time. Tell them we're sorry. Tell them we didn't have a choice. And then silence. Just the sound of water and that low, resonant hum. Fading into nothing. The analysis. Audio specialists isolated the hum, ran it through every database, every known biological sound, every mechanical signature. No match. But when they analyzed the frequency, it was identical to the electromagnetic interference recorded by the Persistence's navigation systems on March 15, 1981, the night before the ship vanished. July 30th, 2021. The final survivor interview. Dr. Nygaard, the biologist found in Reykjavik, had been mostly silent since his return, traumatized, unresponsive. But on July 30th he finally spoke. The investigator asked him, "What do you think happened to the four who didn't age?" Dr. Nygaard looked up. His eyes were hollow. "They didn't disappear," he said. "They were chosen." Chosen? By what? By whatever brought us there in the first place. He leaned forward. "We were never lost. We were never adrift. We were taken, pulled into that place. And we were being studied, observed. I don't know by what. But those four, Maria, Jonas, Håkan, Torben, they were different. They didn't age because they were supposed to stay. Why?" Dr. Nygaard's voice broke. "Because whatever took us wasn't done with them." August 2nd, 2021, the North Atlantic. A cargo ship, the Stella Maris, was sailing northeast of Iceland. At 4:13 a.m., the crew reported seeing lights in the water, deep blue, pulsing. The captain altered course to investigate. As they approached, the lights descended, vanishing into the depths. But before they disappeared, the sonar operator caught something. A shape, rising from the ocean floor, massive. And then, on the sonar screen, 4 smaller contacts, moving with it, human-sized. The operator radioed the Coast Guard. By the time they arrived, nothing, just empty ocean. But the sonar recording remained. And when analysts played it back, enhanced the audio, They heard something, faint, almost imperceptible, a voice, distorted, echoing through the water, speaking Norwegian. Vi er her, vi venter. We are here, we are waiting. The investigation was officially closed on September 14, 2021. The public statement was brief. The SSV Persistence has been recovered. 4 deceased crew members have been identified. 8 survivors have been located and are receiving medical care. The remaining 4 crew members remain missing and are presumed deceased. The cause of the vessel's disappearance remains under investigation. That was it. No mention of the aging. No mention of the grey. No mention of the lights. The Persistence was quietly dismantled, sold for scrap. The survivors were relocated, given new identities, sworn to silence. The families were paid, generously, and the world moved on. But the people who knew, the investigators, the scientists, the survivors, they couldn't forget, because the Persistence wasn't an anomaly, it was a warning. The survivors, where are they now? Dr. Astrid Johansen lives in a small coastal town in Norway. She doesn't go near the ocean anymore, can't even look at it. She spends her days in a cottage surrounded by forest, writing, journals, memoirs, trying to make sense of what happened. But every night, she has the same dream. She's standing on the deck of the Persistence. The grey stretches out in every direction. And in the distance, barely visible, she sees them. Maria, Jonas, Håkan, Torben, standing on the water, watching her, waiting. Engineer Sørensen tried to return to normal life, got a job, reconnected with family, but he lasted 6 months. In March 2022, he walked into the North Sea. His body was never found. The note he left behind said only, "I can still hear the hum. It's calling me back." Deckhand Poulsen is in a psychiatric facility in Denmark, catatonic. He hasn't spoken since October 2021. But the nurses say that sometimes, late at night, he stands at his window, staring out at the ocean, whispering the same words over and over. They're still out there. They're still sailing. The families. Anna Voss, Captain Henrik Voss's daughter, never recovered from seeing her father's body. She'd spent 40 years without him, grieved, moved on, built a life, and then suddenly he was back, dead, elderly, aged beyond recognition, but holding a photograph of her as a baby, proof that he'd thought of her every day for 40 years. She wrote about it once in an interview she gave anonymously to a Norwegian newspaper. "I don't know what's worse," she said, "that he was gone, or that he was alive the whole time, trapped in some place I can't even imagine, growing old without me, knowing he'd never see me again. He lived an entire lifetime in isolation, and I lived mine without him. We were both robbed." The scientific community. Dr. Korsakov, the physicist who'd analyzed the ship, published a paper in 2022, heavily redacted, most of the data classified. But the abstract was public. Evidence suggests the SSV Persistence encountered a localized space-time anomaly of unknown origin. The crew experienced temporal dilation consistent with extreme relativistic effects. Aging 40 years while isolated from standard cosmological time, the mechanism remains unknown. The phenomenon may be repeatable. May be repeatable. That phrase haunted the scientific community because if it happened once, it could happen again. August 2023, the second incident. A Norwegian research vessel, the Havørn, was conducting deep-sea surveys off the coast of Iceland, same region where the Persistence had vanished. On August 12th, the Havørn reported navigational difficulties, electrical interference, compass malfunction. The last transmission came at 11:52 p.m. Reykjavik Coast Guard, this is Havørn. We're experiencing... Something's wrong with the sky. The stars aren't... Transmission cut. By morning, the Havørn was gone. No debris, no distress beacon. Just gone. The search lasted 3 weeks. Nothing. On September 4th, the operation was suspended. Officially, the Havørn was declared lost at sea. But the investigators, the ones who'd worked the Persistence case, they knew, and they waited. 40 years. The question, no one wants to ask. What is the grey? Is it another dimension? A pocket of space-time folded in on itself? Is it a natural phenomenon, some quirk of physics we don't understand yet? Or is it something else? Something deliberate? Dr. Johansson believed the latter. In her final interview before she withdrew from public life, she said, "We weren't lost. We were taken. There's something out there, in the ocean, or under it, or beyond it, and it's collecting us." The four who didn't age, they weren't anomalies. They were the purpose. The rest of us, we were just collateral. We aged out. We became useless. So we were released. But Maria and the others, they're still valuable, still young, still whatever it is that thing wants them to be. And I think it's still out there, waiting, watching, looking for more. The human cost. 16 people boarded the Persistence in March 1981. 12 returned, alive or dead. 4 remain missing, but the real number is higher. Because the 12 who came back, they didn't really return. Their bodies came back, aged, broken. But a part of them, some essential piece of who they were, stayed in the gray. Dr. Johansson said it best. You can't live 40 years in that place and come back whole. Time doesn't just take your youth, it takes yourself. Every day that passes, you lose a little more. And by the end, you're just hollow. I'm 74 years old, but I only lived 42 years. The rest was just waiting to die. What happened to them? Here's what we know. On March 15, 1981, the Persistence sailed into a region of the North Atlantic and encountered something. An anomaly, a rift, a doorway. It doesn't matter what we call it. What matters is this. The ship and its crew were pulled out of normal space-time. They spent 40 years sailing through a place that shouldn't exist. A gray void, an ocean without water, a sky without stars. Time passed for them normally, biologically, psychologically, but they were isolated from the rest of the universe. And something was watching them, something that decided 4 of them were worth keeping. The rest? Discarded. Returned to our world in 2021. Broken and dying. September 2024. The discovery. A deep-sea exploration team funded by a private organization descended to the ocean floor northeast of Iceland, to the exact coordinates where the Persistence had last transmitted. At a depth of 300 meters, they found something. A structure. Not natural, not man-made. Geometric, massive, partially buried in sediment. The footage was classified immediately, but one frame leaked. It showed a surface covered in symbols and etched into the metal, or whatever the material was. 4 names: Jonas Friis, Maria Anderson, Håkan Berg, Torben Clausen. The truth we can't accept. Here's the thing about the Persistence. It's not a mystery, it's a proof. Proof that our understanding of reality is incomplete. Proof that there are places, states of being, beyond our perception. Proof that time is not the constant we believe it to be. And proof that we are not alone. Whatever took the Persistence, it's still out there, waiting, and it will happen again. Final words from Dr. Astrid Johansson. Before she disappeared from public life, Dr. Johansson gave one last statement. It was recorded, never broadcast, but it exists. And it ends with this. If you ever find yourself at sea, and the instruments fail, and the sky looks wrong, turn back. Don't try to push through. Don't try to understand it. Just turn back. Because if you cross that threshold, if you enter the gray, time won't save you. And whatever's waiting on the other side, it won't let you leave unchanged. The ocean doesn't forget, and neither does the gray. Epilogue, January 19th, 2026. Today, right now. Somewhere in the North Atlantic, a fishing vessel is experiencing electrical interference. The compass is spinning. The sky looks wrong. The crew is frightened. They don't know about the Persistence. They don't know about the gray. They're just sailors doing their job. And in 40 years, if we're lucky, we'll find them again. Aged, broken, changed, if we're lucky. The question isn't what happened to the Persistence. The question is, what happened to the 4 who stayed behind? And are they still human? Or are they something else now? Something that belongs to the gray? Something that's waiting for us?